Today, we have a firm club favourite. 54 caps so far. He can play fullback, wing, fly half. He could probably play scrum half if you asked him. He can do it all. Today, we are honoured to have the back-flipping, drop goal kicking and try-scoring chip and chase specialist, Rhyno Smith.
Buonasera, Rhyno. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for having me. That introduction was unbelievable, completely unwarranted. It makes me think of that show. I don't know what it's called, the Premier League show with Kate Abdo, where she does like these amazing intros of all of the boys. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
I'll take that.
Big him up too much. He'll get big-headed.
I wrote that one, so I'm very happy. Thank you.
Did you? I think it's totally warranted, Rhyno. You are, I think, literally everything Eddie said, a firm club favourite. For months, we've had people asking us, like, please, can you invite Rhyno on? You're the chip and chase actual specialist, the drop kick goal kicking machine. I mean, it's all warranted, totally warranted. And on top of it, your Italian, I think, is, I'm going to say, better than anyone's Italian that I've ever heard in the space of such a short amount of time. What's your secret?
Wow. No, thank you very much. I don't know. I'll be that guy that says hard work. No, but I had a really good tutor. She's a South African. I'm not sure, like Coach Rhyno Smith, the one that coaches at Glasgow now. His wife, initially, we had lessons with her, both my wife and I. And later we switched to Franco Jr. He's Italian. He's just, he grew up here. So his Italian's unbelievable. So I've really tried to make an effort. It's not perfect. It's not what I thought it would be after 2 years. I don't know. I backed myself really hard at the beginning. So I don't know. I went through a phase where I was a bit disappointed in it. But nevertheless, I'm just happy that I can interact with some people. So pretty good.
Dude, it's so good. Every time I hear you give an interview in Italian, I am shocked by how well you answer questions. You seem to, like, I feel like we could do this whole interview in Italian.
Yes, I don't know about that. You know what the big issue is? The later it becomes in the day, the more my tank runs out. So I get closer to zero, the later it gets in. So right now I'd be very, very near. The light's already shining. I need to go to the petrol station. So better in English.
All right. Well, we are an English-speaking podcast, so, and also I think Coach would definitely struggle. Eddie would also struggle. We'd all struggle to run the whole thing in Italian. So we won't do it for us, not because you couldn't.
Yeah, no, because obviously I could do the whole thing in Italian, no problem. It would make no difference to me. But just
thank you for that, then. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect.
So I'm going to jump straight in. Obviously, for the context of our listeners who listen to this podcast because it's an English-speaking Italian rugby podcast, you obviously had a super long career in South Africa, and then your first move abroad was in 2021 to Benetton, wasn't it? That was your first time out of South Africa. But it literally felt like a match made in heaven, your move to Benetton. Tell us a little bit about that move and maybe what was the biggest difference with rugby in Italy than the rugby that you were playing in South Africa?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. It's certainly a match made in heaven is how I would and have described it myself. Divine intervention is another way I've put it recently in another podcast. But it's all to say that I really enjoyed my time, obviously, playing rugby in South Africa. I grew up playing it all through junior, like all through school, everything. Went to university. I got a bursary to play rugby at university. And I was really fortunate to play in an era of back-to-back varsity cup finals. I don't know what you guys know about South African rugby. A varsity cup is just about everyone that's professional rugby now, that plays professional rugby nowadays, had to have touched base somewhere in varsity cup in some way, shape or form. So very privileged to have come through that system and that setup. And then, yeah, I moved to the Sharks and really things didn't go my way. Actually, quite early on there, I could see I was struggling to play. I was surrounded by really good players. Initially, there were obviously boys above me, Joe Peterson and Odo Anagani played a bit of fullback at the time, and Willie Leroux was at the Sharks when high quality individuals. Willie then moved on, and then I thought, okay, my chance will come. And then Cohen Bosch came out of high school, and he was a freak as well. And then shortly after him came Apelele Fassi. So I was there during a period of high quality fullback. So I can't complain and say too much about like I was this or that. No, it was just high quality boys. So I didn't get a look every weekend, and it was hard to perform at a high level. Super Rugby is really competitive. So if you're not sharp, you can get left behind basically. And it felt to me I was getting left behind a bit. So I started looking abroad. Things didn't go my way. Excuse me. Things didn't go my way. And then Coach Rhyno Smith actually called me from the Cheetahs. He was coaching there at the time. And for whatever reason, they were running a little bit thin in the back three department. I got an opportunity to play there, and that was just a breath of fresh air. It was running rugby, move the ball, run all teams off your feet. So it really suited my style. I enjoyed the club. It was at altitude as well. So it seemed like all of our tricks were working at the time. I think then COVID struck us at a really awkward time, obviously. But due to the COVID thing and the Cheetahs getting removed from pro rugby, all of us were free to leave if we found a contract. And Benetton, unfortunately, at the time, needed a fullback, and the ball bounced for me finally after 5 years or so of looking. So I'm grateful it happened when it did, because I reckon if I'd have left straight from the Sharks, I may have been caught in like a period of like low confidence, of I'm figuring out finding my identity again. So it came at a good time for me, off the back of some good performances and in the URC competition, or pro rugby as it was known before. So it suited me well. I arrived here at the change of an era here as well. I mean, they had just come off obviously winning a Rainbow Cup, and they had Jaden here at fullback, who was synonymous with the 15 jersey. So it was equally a good time and a bad time to arrive. I remember my first couple of weeks here, people were always saying like it's okay, but we miss Jaden, and like play on. It's fair point. He was unbelievable for the club. So big shoes to fill. And I think a lot of factors, new coach, big shoes, quality boys around me, maybe me maturing at the right time as well. And it's all been really conducive to playing some of my best rugby. And I hope there's even more to come. So, yeah, I would say it helps that my wife and I really love Treviso, like the town and the club. It's been good. And we surrounded, there's a big South African contingent. So, yeah, just a big melting pot, and maybe not one of those things, but all of those things put together has made the environment seem like fit me like a glove. Your question was, what is the biggest difference between playing that side, playing this side? I don't know. I would say the biggest thing for me is, sorry, if you can hear my dog snoring, please just tell me.
No, can't hear it, but that's adorable.
I would say probably like the rugby culture, the way that people watch rugby here is different. The noise level in the stadium is like, it's quite low until something happens that warrants their chanting or clapping or like whatever. And then there's noise. So that's kind of like a weird one. And then I would also say another strange one for me is like, when we train, every day that we train, there are like gents that are like on pension, that are just chilling, watching us train, and then every day then they'll like ask you ciao Rhyno, and then they're just like chatting, like, and it's weird in the sense that like they are technically fans, but I don't think that you can't call them fans anymore if they get to watch all of our training. It's kind of like it's a very personal relationship that we share. Although most of them are speaking dialect 90% of the time, and I don't understand what they're saying, but it's this really intimate feeling with the fans. Anyway, the fans of Benetton. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest difference.
It's so interesting that you've said that, because so Eddie, myself and Coach basically became Benetton fans, I'm going to say about 7-8 years ago. It's about 2017. And one of the biggest things, obviously we live in the UK, one of the biggest things that was a bit of a shock was going to Monego for the first time and hearing the silence, that they weren't so vocal. And Eddie was like, what is this? He felt like he had to be the one like to bring the energy. But then you're right, when something happens, then it's like Leone. And that, alongside the fact, exactly what you've said, that like real close relationship that the club has with, as you say, its fans, its followers, the local people of Treviso, that for us is what kind of made us fall in love with the place. That sort of really community, homely, familial club.
I think
Yeah.
the fans are getting louder and more like energetic. I think, and that comes from Benetton winning. I
Yeah.
think when we first went there, Benetton didn't win very much, so people would sit there and sort of almost academically watch the game without expecting too much. But when you have expectations, you have emotions, you have drama, and so they need to come up with a few more songs.
What you don't that doesn't get tiring for you.
Well, yeah, the
Yeah.
Leone is a classic. I'm not saying it should be binned. You know, it's a hit, but I think we could get a few more.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
Sabre guys have like a million songs. Those like S155 guys, they've got their songs down. So I think we should inject a couple more songs just into the repartee of Benetton.
I don't want to pretend to speak on behalf of all of the players, but we would support this endeavor. So if you guys want to,
All right.
Fine,
get
I'll
to
write a
work.
song. I'll get my
I've been,
guitar out.
I've been asking to bring flares to the matches
Yeah.
since I started. I was like, when can we bring the flares? And like a t-shirt cannon.
On the 1st of June, a t-shirt cannon and the flares, guys.
yeah, we got to do something that's unique to just us. Like, it's
Yeah.
awesome to arrive at like Toulon and they got their their red flares out in the street, or you arrive at Benetton and they got the guy with a microphone. Like, everyone has the unique thing. It'd be nice to get something for the Leone boys. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
We'll have a think about that because they do the hospitality, like they've got that down, right? The Prosecco, the tiramisu, like that's it. That's Benetton, that's Treviso through and through. So yeah, maybe something during the game that just like really identifies the club. We'll get to work on that. We'll report back. But
We'll
yeah.
have a think. You said your trip from was Franco Smith involved in you finding Benetton as well, or is it just sort of coincidental that he was so involved in Italian rugby?
I think I think coincidental would be unfair to the relationship that he would have had maybe with the powers that be in Benetton, Pava, Coach. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure they would have asked him along the way, and I'm sure that he had a few good words to say, because I had heard a rumor a while before that Benetton, there were whispers about Benetton, and then it just ran dry. They obviously then players. So I don't know. It would be also unfair of me to say definitely yes, because I don't have this written down anywhere. I give full credit to Pava and him and his people that came to find me, until such a time that somebody explains the story to me and says, this is the person actually responsible for you being at Benetton. So yeah, I don't know exactly who, but I'm grateful.
That is amazing.
Right.
Just going back to you summarizing kind of what brought you to Benetton and all of those things. I mean, I'm a firm believer in kind of there is a time for everything to happen and like things falling into place and fate and all of that. And yeah, you having that time at the Cheetahs to just be free and develop that like running free rugby that then you brought to Benetton. I mean, it blows my mind that anyone was saying like, we miss Jaden Hayward. I mean,
hang on. We did love Jaden Hayward, but when Rhyno turned up, it was very much sort of like, well, Jaden Hayward used to have his very unique sort of, and he retired, I think, just as he was getting to the best rugby that I was seeing of his career. He was like sort of at a peak, and he had this lovely swerving running style, which I thought was amazing. He sort of slided through defenders like a knife through butter. When you turned up and you brought an entirely new, exciting way to play fullback. So it was like an exciting fullback replacing an exciting fullback. And that was great. No boring fullbacks for us. We're not interested.
Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate that. And obviously, I mean, I watched him play a lot, thinking that I would probably arrive here and we'd be in competition. So I was on one hand relieved that he did leave, that it alleviates some of that internal struggle. No, but really, like you say, he did have a very unique way of playing, and I fortunately never tried to like emulate it or copy it or anything like that. I always knew he's a very different, even now physically we're different athletes. So a lot that, he was world class, and like I say, really big shoes to fill, and I think that was part of what drives me still. Is I've always wanted to be at a club where, like he is and was, like when you think of the number 15 jersey of Benetton, a face pops into your head. And I've always wanted to be that guy. I still want to be that guy for Benetton. I'll have to go well into my 40s to be able to replace Jaden as that face that you think of when you think of the Benetton jersey. But for the time being, I'm able to struggle every day or every weekend to slowly become that face that people, that's synonymous with a number.
I think you're being very humble there. I think it, well, I was going to say it goes without saying, but I think we will say it. Everyone that we speak to is in love with you and so happy that you're at the club and you are just week in, week out. Whenever I see your name on the team sheet, I'm excited. And I think I speak for a lot of people on that. So yeah, Jaden Hayward was great.
He did have a very iconic beard game. You know,
yes,
his beard was very strong towards the end.
His beard, two things that I do envy about his beard game, 100% his beard game is too strong. Second of all, his ability to play week in and week out and seemingly never tire, never get in. His body is so resilient. It's unbelievable. I don't know how he's managed to do that. So those are two things that I wish I could borrow from him. I probably need to write a long letter to him asking, explain. But yeah, nevertheless, here we are.
But, I mean, he probably wouldn't like me bringing this up, but I'm trying to remember it. But there was a time when Benetton were in the playoffs. We'll talk about playoffs soon. Against Munster, and I think he missed a drop goal attempt, which wasn't easy, so it's not like a thing. But then Benetton lost to Munster and didn't get through to the semi-finals. But if you were the fullback, there's a good opportunity you would have made that drop goal, because your drop goal game is sort of off the charts, out of this world. And I want to ask, like, how do you get permission to, like, what's the freedom that you're given to be able to pop a drop goal from anywhere? Is it just because you nail them? They just go like, yeah, cool, Rhyno does that. Or how's it work?
I don't know. We've never addressed this topic on the nose before. So if Borto listens to this podcast, let's not discuss it, please, coach. But no, but I would say it's look, I've been kicking drop goals since school. The first drop goal that I ever kicked in a game that I recall was in a derby game in South Africa. I was in Paul Boys High. We played against Grey College Bloemfontein. I kicked a drop goal there quite far out, but it's in Bloemfontein, so the ball travels quite far. We end up drawing that game. The score was 12-15 at the time. Kicked a drop goal, we drew the game. They were the best team in the country at the time. So for us to go there and draw was massive. And I do remember thinking back like, flip, that was like, I got to remember that I have that in the bag, you know. Anyway, the next I tried again, I end up having the legs and I miss it. And then it kind of makes you go, is this the right thing? And I think this plays into, I guess, the question you're actually asking is like, how do you know? I think I've kicked in my lifetime, round number, 100,000 drop goals, maybe more. Because for me, not in games, I mean like just practice or whatever, you know, like human over my lifetime. And for me, drop goal is a drop goal is the easiest way for me to find my body's kicking rhythm. I've been helping the Benetton, the Red Panthers, the girls where they're kicking, and I've been saying to them, like, if I'm kicking poorly, out of hand, chip kick, anything where I feel like I just don't feel the ball and the timing's off, I'll kick 20 drop goals back to back. I'm not too bothered where the ball goes. I just want to feel my body move through the ball. So it's something I've become very comfortable with, is the long or the short. As far as the distance goes, I think when I arrive at the stadium, you might see me walk like a big square on the 22, on the 15, like that, to try to get a feel of what the wind is doing. And if the pitch feels good underfoot, then I'll kind of store it in my mind. Listen, there's this opportunity. If the pitch does not look like it allows for it, I most likely won't try one. It's kind of like I take it out of the bag. So it's a mixture of being ready in my mind that this thing the opportunity might present itself. And then you just got to kind of like stay ready, I guess. So far, like I say, neither Coach Borto nor anyone else in the team has really said anything to me. I've missed for Benetton 3 times as well in my time here. Don't forget. So I tried Glasgow 2 years ago. I missed short actually. Edinburgh earlier this year. So I kicked the Stormers drop goal. The week later I played, 2 weeks later I played Edinburgh in Edinburgh. Easy kick in front of the post, 38 odd meters out. The ball went under the post actually. And then I missed one more against the Bulls 2 years ago at Loftus. So I've kicked as many over as I've missed for Benetton. So it's certainly not something, but nobody seems to remember the misses, which
I
I'm happy
remember
about.
them.
But
Yeah.
I didn't remember
No,
any
I've
of the
reminded-
misses.
Yeah. It just goes
anyway,
to show you people will remember the good moments, right? So actually, like those moments that you beat yourself up about, most of the time people don't remember them.
probably, yeah, proof of my brain works. But I'm thinking I'm going at 50% for Benetton. So yeah, hopefully there's another one in the bag to finish on a 60% or whatever for my.
Yeah.
Many more. And when it comes to kicking, who chooses who kicks off, like just for points in general? You've got like you've got Albanoz, you've got Jacob, you've got a few people who can all kick there. So how does it work? Selection of kickers.
It's I don't know. I actually.
Do you decide on the
Genuinely, I
pitch, or do you
Yeah, it's
decide?
a bit of a feeling thing. Like, I'm feeling myself today, guys. Let me have a go.
I don't know that it's that. I think it's personnel. Like I've played in teams before where coaches make that decision, and then I've played in this team like now where it kind of feels like if our 10 feels comfortable kicking, then he'll kick. It kind of feels like it's one and the same with the number 10 jersey. On the odd occasion that something's up or whatever, then it'll get allocated. So I kicked in my first season here because Tommy was injured in my first year, and I fly off that year. So then, and I kicked quite well. And then when he came back, I just continued kicking. Then last season, I didn't kick at all. I want to say there were maybe 2 games where I kicked a goal. And then, the first 2, I think. And then again, this year, I only kicked against Zebre, the game. And then last week. So you got to, again, stay ready. The opportunity / responsibility might fall to you at any given time. And I think it's one of those things I quite rely on the years and years and years that I'm a bit older than most of the boys. So I got a few more years in the legs, and I spent my university years where, because we weren't training probably as hard as it wasn't professional, it was probably semi-pro. Then I would do a lot of extra kicking. So I reckon I'm relying on like the 10,000 hours I've built up from before. Which I'm grateful I did. I put in those years, because now as I'm getting older, I find that it's harder for me to do extras, like to just stay up after training and kick a bunch of kicks. So I'm relying on muscle memory, but I've got my days where I have to go in and put in the work. So stay ready. That's the moral of the story.
I mean, you kicked, it was a couple of years ago, you were playing 10 against Gloucester in the Challenge Cup in Gloucester. That was right.
Yeah.
And did you get a drop goal in that game as well?
No, I didn't. I didn't kick a drop. I kicked a long range penalty, and then I tried an even longer one, the next penalty, and then it went under. And then I was like, I probably should take the confidence and knock down. But yeah, that came very well. It was my Challenge Cup debut. And, playing URC was something I really looked forward to moving to Europe. But playing in Challenge or Champions Cup was like this really big thing for me. I was like, because I always used to watch it growing up, and you see Munster play Toulouse, and then you're like, flip, anything can happen here. And I wanted to be in a game like that. So, I really look forward to that game, and I really enjoyed it actually as well. I remember Monty and I linked up in the game as well. We played nicely. We ended up getting pumped probably because we couldn't stop them all. But to be fair, I remember the game quite fondly.
Well, we were there because we'd just come back from a road trip of Italy, which is a long story. But then we came back, and our first stop back, we went to Gloucester to watch it. And literally, there were Gloucester fans who were sort of like, who the hell is this guy? Like, you had everyone there was like, who's this? Sorry, who's playing 10 for, like, you blew them away.
Yeah.
You blew them away.
Yeah. No, I loved it. And I loved how they are like insult the crowd. They are such a part of the game, like screaming stuff. And man, they were like in it. And then after the game, I assume the same people that were screaming and like insulting and trying to get in my head, they were the ones that while I was standing out at the bus, ooh, there's a fly. While I was standing at the bus, they were very open to coming up to him and be like, hey, did you play fly off today? I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get it here. I go, yeah. The guy's like, Flip, I thought you were awesome. Congrats with whatever. And you can tell they're an educated crowd as well. So as I say, I remember that night very fondly. I remember some of the chirps on the field amongst the boys as well. And just, I thought it was class. I really enjoyed the challenge.
Well,
Fantastic.
I was going to jump in because, on the topic of Gloucester, on the topic of Challenge Cups, obviously this has now been the second year in a row where Benetton have made the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. But their journey has stopped there. My question to you, what lessons do you think, what was the sort of general feeling after the Gloucester game? Because we were there again a couple of weeks ago for that. And it felt like Benetton could have won that game. And my question to you is kind of what was the feeling afterwards? Do you think there were like lessons that weren't really learnt from the Toulon game the year previously? Or what do you think just didn't quite click into place?
Yeah, we will have to wait until the season's over so that we can have a proper look at that, at the day, the week, just all of it. We 100% pitched up there thinking we have what it takes to win that game. And based off the review we did, there was a review, but I think you can be a bit harder on yourself when the season's over. But even the small review that we've had, we still think we not only could have, but probably should have won the game. Personally, I look back and I say the Toulon game was a big wake-up call, maybe. We arrived there like with wind in our sails. We played really well against Cardiff and Connacht at home. We moved the ball. We played well, multi-phase rugby. And then we arrive at Toulon and it's raining. They get red carded in the 9th minute and they pop us. Just, we were not ready for the smoke that they brought. Gloucester this year, for me, felt like they threw punches at us. We had to absorb a lot of heat, especially initially. And then we started swinging back. And every time we got back into the game, we would just have a lapse in concentration that would either give them 3 points or then at the end of the game, they scored 2 tries to make it, to kind of take it, just nudge ahead. But it felt to me like we were actually like in the fight. We were not just a passenger or like for that game. So as far as I'm concerned, we're trending in the right direction. Playoff rugby is something that, in my experience, you get better at it the more you do it. So if we're not in South Africa, what you find is clubs that end up doing well in URC or Super Rugby that time are the same clubs that do well in Currie Cup a couple of seasons before. So you'll go Currie Cup semi-final, Currie Cup final, win or lose, doesn't matter. But then you'll find them, they're in the playoffs at Super Rugby. So it's this thing that you learn. You learn to handle high pressure moments. You learn to how we communicate. You learn who you rely on. All of these things. And for me, Benetton, we're not in the fortunate position where we have 2 competitions in a year. Like we don't play in Serie A. So potentially if we played in Serie A and every year or every 3 years or 2 years, we are in a final or semi-final, we're learning, we are getting that like, the calluses on our hands from the work we're putting in. Whereas now we kind of have to wait every 12-month cycle to be involved in a playoff. So this is something that we're going to have to address because you can't wait for 12 months to learn those lessons. And it's certainly something we're trying to talk about, trying to train. Like you can do your best to create certain scenarios and so on during training. So we are trying to do all of those things. I think it really helps that players that are being signed and brought in, especially the foreigners for that matter, for now anyway, they are guys that have played in finals and semis and things. I mean, Malachi has won the URC, man. There's not many people. He's won a World Cup. So there are lessons to be learned and things to take on board from the people that join the journey we're on. And all of that combined with the positive trajectory of the club makes me confident that next year, should we arrive in that position, that we'll be more prepared than we were this year. And that's really all that you can ask for, because nothing's guaranteed. You can arrive at from anywhere in the world at any given day, and then it bounces for you or it doesn't bounce for you. So the best you can do is to try to be prepared, and then we're going to do our best to be prepared for next year. But I would say to all of those that are asking, and all of the fans and that say, oh, it's the same as last year. The sentiment that we have is that it's not the same as last year. It felt like we were there to compete, whereas the year before it felt almost like arriving there was the achievement.
Yeah.
And the fact that we are now all disappointed and we're having this conversation illustrates to me like expectations growing, but so is our ability to deliver on that expectation. So
I think that's it's a really good way of summarizing that, because you're right. I mean, Toulon, if you look at Toulon, I think their stat was that they'd made it to 3. They'd never won, but they'd made it 3 times and just never got past that.
It was their third
hurdle.
final. I think it was
their third final without ever winning. And then, like, you know, eventually they ended up winning it in the end. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say that the game against Toulon and getting to Toulon and getting to this game against Gloucester was in any way similar. I mean, yes, in terms of like how far we got on the journey was the same, but in terms of the game that you guys brought, it was chalk and cheese. We spoke to Jacob Umanga afterwards, and we spoke to him after the Toulon game, and it was like completely different energy. And even though he was gutted, he said exactly the same. He was like, in fact, you said it, Eddie, you were like, well, much better than last year, right? Like, you can feel gutted, but you know, as you say, like the trajectory is going that way.
I mean, Toulon last year, they did. You're right when you said they brought the smoke they brought, though, because again, we were there for that. And I've never been in a rugby stadium like that. The atmosphere there and the intensity of the feeling in the air was unlike any rugby game I've ever been to. The air was thick.
And it rained from minute -10, from the warm-up until after that game. And that stadium was packed. Nobody left. They got red carded 10 minutes. Nobody left. They kicked goals. Nobody. I stood there. I played on the wing that day. I just stood there so frustrated, like out of my skin, because there was nothing that we could do. Not me or one of our forwards. Like, I imagine they felt the same. It felt like we were just there because Toulon needed 15 other blokes to call it an official match. That's why we were there. Like, that's genuinely what it felt like. And it just felt like they were comfortable sitting in that groove. And that's a lesson that you learn with time and with experience and with man, you got to take those on the chin sometimes and say, yes, we weren't good enough. And we weren't good enough last year. We weren't good enough this year. Hopefully, if we ever get presented another opportunity, we'll be prepared and good enough on that day.
Well, I'm sure you will. And this in 2 weeks, not this weekend, the weekend after, it's essentially another knockout game. Potentially, the table's all quite complicated, when Benetton play Edinburgh at home. And if the Sharks win next week, then a 7th place is what's required to get a Champions Cup. So that's basically another knockout opportunity.
Well, 100%. And if you think about it in context, actually, we've been playing knockouts for the last 8 games or so, or 8 weeks or so. Because our game against Connacht here, the first one, the one that Zaza scores the match winner in the corner, that was a knockout game for us. Because if we lose that, then we're effectively out of the running already. And the same goes for then, like, we went obviously Lions and then Connacht again, and then we had Ulster. So if in any one of those games we didn't either win or take points, our run in the URC would be over now, and we'd just be facing a final fixture. So preparation, we talk about preparation and chances to learn things. We've been learning, and hopefully it will stand us in good stead next weekend. Obviously, we played Edinburgh once this year, there by them, and we came out on top just because we stuck to our guns. That's what it's going to take next weekend. Like you say, I don't imagine next weekend will be the kind of game where there'll be 4 tries on either side of the ball and both Edinburgh and ourselves qualify for the playoffs. I don't think so. My gut tells me it's going to be close. It won't be bonus points either way. And the losing team, if anything, will take 1 point from the game, which won't be, if my gut tells me it won't be enough. So yeah, it is a round of 16 game as far as I'm concerned. As far as the Champions Cup story goes, that's a secondary issue as far as I'm concerned. I've personally, for my personal logbook, I've personally never played in the URC playoff, so that would be one for the bucket list as well. And again, there it doesn't matter who you play and where you play them. Anything can happen in a playoff game. So we need to do the first and most important job, and that's Edinburgh, and I'm sure they will be arriving with the same mindset. So I said in Afrikaans, I had an Afrikaans interview last week, saying next weekend will be all out legalized warfare, and that's what I reckon it'll be. There'll be blood and sweat and all the things, and people chanting Leonie, I'm sure of it.
It's sold out. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, you guys have been selling out that stadium pretty much almost all.
No, but it's sold out really early because we're coming. And the good news is, Rhyno, that if you win that game, then obviously you go to the playoffs. If you lose that game, which you won't, but if you were to lose it, there's a touch rugby tournament just across the road, and we have a team, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be your last game of rugby of the season either way. You know.
I hear you. You're gonna have to put that application in with my wife, and she'll have to approve that. I'm quite gonna give you.
She could play. It's mixed.
Yeah, well, there's another thing that you'll have to discuss with her. So no, it's over. There'll be no rugby on TV, phones, iPads.
That's fair. That's fair.
With how long preseason was last year. Then we watched all of the World Cup, which is new for this household because we don't watch that much rugby anymore. And then obviously your C's come around, and we've been all in on that. And then so it's been a lot.
Six Nations. It's yeah. I mean, I feel like I remember when we spoke to, it was Jacob last year. He was telling us about preseason, and preseason for you guys was like 3 months. It was huge, like really intense. He couldn't believe it. But obviously it's done great things because you guys are, Benetton are having a great season. Objectively, it's been a banging season. The start of the season was incredible. I want to touch really quickly on just the last couple of weeks because you guys were in South Africa. And as you say, all of these games have felt a little bit like make or break kind of playoff knockout games. I don't think on paper, as much as we are Benetton fans and we believe in Benetton and we know you guys can beat anyone on a good day, the Sharks' victory was just phenomenal. How did that feel for you, obviously, as an ex-player? How was it? Describe it to us.
Man, so good. Yes, I get goosebumps now thinking about it. Obviously, for me personally, it was a really nice ode to my time that I spent there. I touched on it a little bit earlier. Good memories, bad memories, everything in between that I had in that stadium. So it was nice to put another big flippin' good one up there on the wall, put a nail in it, and yeah, walk away with that. I had a couple of friends in the stands, and my dad also flew up. My dad came with his Benetton jersey, number 15 on the back. Biggest smile I've seen on the big man in ages. So, and I think he also realizes, like, the thing about rugby is when things are going tough, then it's tough, man. And nobody cares. That's the worst. Like when you're doing well, everyone's like tapping you on the back and like, and your DMs are full. And when it's going bad, people just like discard you. They don't even wonder, hey, where's that oak that doesn't happen. Then it's you, then it's me and my missus there. And so I think my dad also just knew like all of the times that I spent there, like dark times, tough times, and just to have that memory now as the one that certainly will go on top of the list there. That was really pleasant as far as me personally goes. As far as you say, like you believe anything can happen, but the Sharks game, like it goes without saying, it's a team that had 7, 8 Springboks in there, maybe 5, 6 World Cup winners. So it's not a thing that you take lightly, not when you arrive there, certainly. We had a couple of injuries in the Gloucester game, so we were slightly thinner than you want to be when you're going to go play against a quality side like that as well. But at the end of the day, the high pressure, and Borto touched on this during the week. He said the difficulty of the Gloucester game, where when we came under pressure, we didn't always respond correctly. Against the Sharks, it felt like when we came under pressure, we responded correctly. And I think without the Gloucester game, probably the Sharks fixture doesn't happen. But then again, you're so emotionally and physically drained after a game like that, that by the time the Bulls game comes around, you're right, altitude, they come with tempo, then you don't necessarily have the full tank to be able to do that. It's a combination of things, and you'll look back and wonder and consider all of the things. But hey, man, 4 points against the Sharks in Durban. 4 points against the Sharks anywhere on the moon.
Yeah.
So we'll take that any day of the week, and it keeps our hopes alive.
Completely. I think you're spot on when you say, I think that without that Gloucester game, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, but we talked about it on our previous episode that that win felt like it was a real bounce back from what happened against Gloucester. Obviously, we aren't in the changing rooms. We don't know, and we just speculate and chat a lot of rubbish most of the time. But we were like, it felt like that inner fight, that inner dog came out against the Sharks, and you matched they came at you came back. Doing it was just a phenomenal game of rugby, and you guys, we looked at that team sheet in the week leading up to it, as you say, 7 or 8 Springboks, and you're like, oh my god, but you matched them across the field and every spot.
And the stat that stuck out was 2 penalties conceded the entire game.
100%. That's, when you say unheard of, it's not a manner of saying. It's a genuinely, I don't think I've heard of a stat that low. Certainly not for Benetton in the time that I've been here. So it goes to show, and hats off to everybody that went scratched deep into their pockets to find the necessary energy and just the mindset in order to do that. The big thing now is you've done it once. Now you have to you have to be able
no excuses.
I mean, Aminu, that's his debut. He comes against the Springbok front row, holds his own, doesn't give away penalties. That goes to show, neither him nor Flush, Federico Zani, is this Zani, I think. Neither of them. It's weird when you know guys by nicknames, you don't know their real name. But neither of them were even involved against Gloucester,
Yeah.
And then for them to come out of that, basically out of obscurity. Destiny played for Moliano the week before. So, again, hats off to straight across the board, all of the boys that managed. Leo Marine hasn't played at 10. We played one game for us at 10 this season. And then other than that, he's been on the wing at 12. And then he started the game against the Sharks, kicks a 50-22 in the first 3 minutes. So, again, just honestly a testament to the squad that's busy growing and how we are trending in the right direction. Honestly, that will be the theme of
And even the Bulls game, I know because the score was quite big in the Bulls game, but that 4-try bonus point was so important. And you scored 5 tries against the Bulls, but the 4-try bonus point, that again, when you talk about sort of small margins in a season or the importance of it, that was essential.
Yeah, 100%. Look, you don't want to compare yourself to other sides, so that's certainly not what I'm doing. But it is to say that Glasgow left Scotland top of the log to go to South Africa. They come back with 1 point after 2 games. So South Africa is not a place that's going to give you points for free. And so for us to go there, go 21-0 down in 20 minutes and then fight back and score 5 tries shows a lot of class. It shows a lot of effort, and it shows a squad that's learning to stick it out in difficult times. And again, it shows boys that are going to the well week in and week out. It's easy to find energy when you're 5 points down against the Sharks and you think, yes, we have a chance here to do something that's never been done before. It's easy to find energy to try to go ruck or make an extra tackle or extra. When you're 21-0 down, then to find that motivation, that's the difference between world-class sides and teams that finish 9th or 10th. Every year in URC, there are teams that must playoffs by 1 game. So, man, we have 1 game left, everything to play for, and that's if you'd have given us that as an option at the beginning of the year, after our 3 months preseason that you spoke about, Ellie, we would have paid a lot of money to have that opportunity next week, Saturday. So that's it. I can shrug my shoulders and say we've done enough to be in the position we are now. It would have been really nice. Do you know what would have been really nice? For next week to be a formality. But
Yeah.
if given me this option at the beginning of the season, I would have taken it. And I would have gone as hard as we can with our prep, select as good of a side as we can, pack Monego full of people that will scream Leone relentlessly, and we give it a full go and get the cards full.
I love that.
Yeah,
I think you're right on paper, right? I mean, yes, you look at the beginning of the season, you're like, gosh, there were moments like weeks where, Benetton is sitting at the top of the league. But on paper, like actually objectively, the growth over the last couple of years has been so apparent. And I think the way that you've summed it up is spot on. It's I think the fact that the stadium is full week in, week out, the fact that they're having to build an extra stand, all of that just goes to show the incredible growth that's happening at Benetton. We keep joking every time like Benetton make another signing or like extend another contract, like your contract extension, we keep saying like they are assembling an army for the long term, and it's so exciting.
And that's why, I know you said it's a secondary thing right now down the line, but the Champions Cup position, I was torn on it, first of all, because I was like, oh, maybe the Challenge Cup would be great to win that. Like, go out there and win the Challenge Cup. If they're in the Challenge Cup next season, they can win it. But then a friend of mine said, like, no, you're not thinking big enough. Like, Champions Cup. Benetton now need to be at the top table, playing the absolute powerhouses of European rugby. It's where they deserve to be. And watching it, like that is where I think Benetton deserve to be, and where you want to be going and playing in Toulouse, you want to be playing in La Rochelle, you want to be taking on, I don't know, Northampton right now or something, even though you have played at Northampton. But that would be so exciting to see Benetton do that.
And as you say, I think it's that thing of we saw it for us who've been following Italian rugby for a long time. Like we called it 3 or 4, 5 years ago. Like Italy, or in a couple of years' time, Italy will be competing in the Six Nations properly. Like Italy will be winning 2-3 games every Six Nations. I was confident of that 3 or 4 years ago. But obviously you had to still go through those 3 or 4 years where like the results weren't coming in, and people time in, time out, like you're having to sit there and defend like that Italy are coming, and they are coming. And eventually like this Six Nations was the Six Nations where I think they've kind of made their mark. And now you're hearing whispers amongst the people who don't follow Italian rugby, who don't follow Italian national rugby or club rugby, these whispers of like, oh, but was it just a fluke year? And that thing now is no, they're here, that the growth is very apparent, they are here to stay. And it's kind of the same with Benetton, right? Like Benetton have slowly but surely been doing this, and this season everyone's going like, oh, where have Benetton come from? And it's like, well, no, Benetton have come from a solid foundation with a lot of work behind it.
What was it like, obviously, because you have been at Benetton the entire season, so obviously you weren't part of the Six Nations. What's the atmosphere? How do I word this? It's almost like two teams play for Benetton sometimes when the Six Nations happen. You lose so many internationals, and then you have all the other guys step in, and then you've got, you're there starting all the time, all year round. But is it very, very, what's the atmosphere like? How does it change when the internationals go away and all these other guys come in and start playing? And it happens for weeks. What's it like?
It would be a lie to say that it's easy, because it's not. And it's unfortunately a condition of the circumstance that Italy finds itself in right now. That is, there are 2 professional clubs, and in the years that one club does significantly better than the other, inevitably the bulk of the team will come from our players. So this is not throwing shade at anyone or anything. It is to say that if anybody thinks they support Italian rugby and they hope for bad things to happen to Zebre or poor season, then they don't actually support Italian rugby. So this is my overriding thought on that. It's really difficult when we have 20 boys leave and 11 of them start for Italy, 3 on the bench, and then there's 6 or so that aren't even involved, but they can't play for us. So it's hard to see, it's hard to feel it, because there is a difference. And there's a difference in any team you go to. People often say, yes, Leinster could put a C team out and they'll probably finish in the playoffs of the competition. And me not saying that that's not true, but it is to say that how many players Leinster don't send as many players to Ireland's national camp as we do. It might feel like it, but it's not factual that they send the same amount of players as us on a weekend to the team. Then, when the competition's over, the Six Nations, those boys that have been rested, played a bit, they get to come back and they play for Leinster again, or Munster, or Ulster, whatever the case may be. Springboks are the same. Whereas by us, because a guy like, I use 2 examples, maybe Nacho and maybe Mitch Lamaro, both of them play as many games as they can for Benetton, and then all the games, all the minutes for Italy. So when they come back from Six Nations or World Cup, they've got 4 weeks where they have to be off. Realistically, they have to be off, otherwise they won't be able to understand. So we're not only battling, or the challenge is not only for the 6 or the 3 weeks that the boys are away, it's also a little bit before and a little bit after. Now you give a guy a chance in that window that hasn't played much of the season before, and you're like, okay, go on. And if you think who we played this year in that window, we played Leinster, Glasgow, and one more.
Was it Osprey? No, that was after.
That was before. Oh, but nevertheless, so and to add insult to injury this year, for lack of excuse the irony, but I got injured in the Montpellier game. So I end up missing that window again. So whereas I would prefer to be on the field, even though things are going terribly, than to be sitting in the pavilion and not in a position to do something about what's going on. And that felt this year was hard for me to watch, because obviously last year I was, like you said, I was involved during this window, and in my first season as well, I was involved in the window. So at least I could be there and like trying to say something or do something or just do my bit, not talk, just do my bit. And I wasn't able to this year. So it was really hard to watch. And because the boys are trying, man, they're doing their best. Our coaches, they do their best. It's just the hand you're dealt. It's very, very difficult. But this is supposed to be, and I'm not saying this as it's not a caveat or a chicken. I'm not chickening out from everything that I just said. But it should be like a privilege. Like it should be like, what? It's actually a massive compliment that we have 21. Our third choice, whatever position, is getting pulled up into the Italian national side. So it's actually a massive compliment to the system that Benetton's building, to from the people that sign players, to the coaches, to the players that are able to put out performances weekly that are counting for something. It's a massive compliment, but it's not to shy away from how challenging it is. We need to learn to ride out that wave better, because in my 3 years here, we've not gotten a single log point during the international window. So
wow.
Don't quote me on that, but that's I'm quite sure. I'm like 90% sure that that's a fact. So
it was surprising. It was surprising. I mean, because this year when the Six Nations was on, and then the team, the Benetton teams were announced, every week I still looked at that side and I went, "That's a rock solid team. Those are really good players." And then the points didn't come, and I found it quite strange. I don't know, but I did think this before. When you watch, as a fan, when you watch a team lose, a team that you support, and like they lose, it's disappointing. But I often think, but imagine how much more disappointing it is if you're one of the players who's not playing. That, what you just said, I imagine that is the most frustrating feeling. Because
man, it's literally, I would rather be on the pitch, like having to really to just try to turn around a performance or something, than be sitting stuck in the pavilion. Like I watched that Glasgow game, man. It was raining. They kept chipping the ball up with a flipping rack. It was so frustrating to watch. And it's just like, there's nothing we can do. It's just the hands chopped off, literally, it felt like. So, And I agree fully that during that window, we still put out a pretty decent side. That's 100% true. And again, testament to the squad that we're assembling here. But it is to say that, or something needs to be said about when you go from 1 week to the next and there are 18 changes. Because if you look at the team that would have played the week before and the team that plays the first game during that window, there could be easily 18 changes in that squad. So it's not that the quality of the player drops significantly, not at all. It's potentially that the sharpness of said player, or potentially that new pairs, or what do you say, new like 9 and 10
combinations.
That's the word. Combinations that are just like untested or brand new, or so just like a couple of factors that are not easy. But as I say, it's not an excuse. It is definitely right now one of our bigger work-ons, and something that we must learn to relish, because because actually it's a massive compliment. It's to say we had 16 boys at the World Cup. What other club in the world can say that?
Yeah.
And you should have had more, because Albanoz should absolutely have 100% been there for Argentina.
Menincello was injured as well. Like there was a bunch of people who should have, could have. Yeah.
Tetas should have gone, obviously, with his calf as well. So no, you're right. You're 100% right. Hey, it's the double-edged sword. But we just have to keep improving, keep trying to be better when that window comes. It's not for a lack of trying, sometimes just whatever you're doing, you're just not getting the bounce of the ball as well. So hey man, these are the battles you have to win if you want to be in playoffs and winning competitions and be a world-class team. And that's certainly what we're trying to do now. So hopefully in due time.
Yes, speaking of like seasons in the year, when you do go down to South Africa, does do your teammates ask for little tips and tricks of how to take on the South African way of playing, but also how much is altitude a factor in going down there? Is it a big factor?
My personal belief around altitude is that it's potentially more a psychological factor than a physiological factor. So when you walk upstairs in altitude, you feel it, your breath is racing, but then you have the decision to stop walking or the decision to keep walking, because we were really tired against the Bulls the first 20 minutes, let's say. It certainly looked like it. And for me, it certainly felt like it. I had a big chase effort there for the ball that was clearly knocked on, mind you. Anyway.
We haven't talked about that, but because we've not managed to talk about that episode. But yes. Anyway.
But he managed to find the energy to score 5 tries in the last 50 minutes of the game. So I think there's a physiological factor, but there's a bigger psychological factor where people that play at altitude are accustomed to the feeling that you get. My university was in Potchefstroom, so it's at altitude as well. I played many games in my life in Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Bloemfontein. And obviously then I played for the Cheetahs in Bloemfontein. So I've been a player that's visiting. I've been a player that's stationed there. You feel it, but you just have to keep going. Your body will find a way to deal with it. Like, just your throat's burning. It feels like it's on fire, but you can keep running. Your legs and that are fine. So, man, I don't know what more to say. I think that's also like a matter of when you experience it, you become a little bit more accustomed to it, and then you kind of know like what to expect. And for us, that the last time we played at altitude was 2 years ago. Understand? We played, Durban and Cape Town last year. So we went there. So 2 years ago, we went Johannesburg, Pretoria. That was a lot of people's first time. And then this year, a lot of the team that went 2 years ago weren't there this time around for whatever reason. So again, bleeding a lot of young and new faces to this feeling of like, it feels like I literally am breathing through my eyes. But keep going. Like, so, you just...
It seems like the way you're talking about it is that it's not a big deal. But the words that you're using paint quite a different picture. Your throat is on fire. It feels
You're
like you're
breathing
breathing
through
through your eyes.
It feels like you're not getting enough oxygen in your body because you're breathing through the small gap in your eyes. It feels like that. But no, it's to say that it does hurt. Like, it's genuinely, the biggest thing is like your throat really burns. But it's not like playing on a pitch that's muddy where your legs are the first thing that goes. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
maybe I am lucky in that I've had that experience. Like I say, from junior rugby, from school already, we travel up there and go play against a team.
Yeah.
So I felt it in various different forms. And yes, it makes a difference. But ultimately, Munster left Ireland, went to the Bulls and beat them. So
Yeah.
they can go from 5 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius in 1 week at altitude and beat them, then it can be done. So you
Well,
just gotta.
it did feel like watching the game, I was exhausted, like watching the players, because it did look so tiring. But I did write in my notes while watching the game, like, Rhyno looks like the only Benetton player who's actually like sprinting. And I wondered whether like how much of it is, like, as you say, psychological, but also physiological. And that thing of, it sounds like what you're saying is, yeah, it hurts like hell, but you're not going to die. Just like power through, and then you'll realize that it's okay. But then it is definitely like also like the ball. I didn't know this. The ball travels more at altitude. Who knew that? I mean, you obviously did, but I didn't. And so my question then is, do the Bulls, when they then come to play at kind of normal level, are they like superhuman? Do they suddenly feel like, oh my God, I could run for 70 days? Like, right? Does it work both ways?
No, it does. Scientifically, yes, me with no science degrees, but theoretically, yes. For the first 5 days, I think, after you leave altitude, there's a difference. Like, your blood has more oxygen, but then at some point, it withers quite drastically. It's like kind of like that, and then it drops off immediately. So not superhuman, certainly not, but you do feel the difference with the way that you kick the ball, because, and this is something that I learned playing for the Cheetahs, we would kick the ball long in Bloemfontein. We never kicked up. But then we'd come to Europe, and more than altitude, in Europe, the problem is when it's cold, the ball doesn't travel as far, because something to do with the density of the air in the ball and the density of the air outside that the ball must travel through. It doesn't travel as far. So we would then arrive in Europe and try to kick the ball long. And then instead of kicking it 65 meters, you've got a 52-meter kick. Now they can counter-attack the ball. Those numbers are completely made up, by the way. But it's just that there could be easily a 10-meter difference on the flight of the ball. So kicking the ball short and contesting for the ball was a much better ploy for us than trying to kick the ball long. Whereas in Bloemfontein, you could pass the ball backwards to your 10, and he'd still kick the ball long enough that the fullback has to turn around and run backwards and take the ball, which means he has to catch it, turn around before he can start counter-attacking, which he then kicks the ball back to you. In Europe, not the case. You kick it to him, he catches it, they carry it, and then they keep the ball when he phases. And then, so you see, I think in that sense, it's good and bad when you're the team that's at altitude and come to travel.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying, Rhyno, is that my golf would be better in Bloemfontein.
100%. You'll feel like a new man. And furthermore, you might never play golf in Europe ever again.
Interesting.
It makes about a one club difference. Certainly half a club, but could be about a one club difference.
Wow, that's huge.
And this is so off topic for rugby, but when you slice it or you hook it, does that affect? I imagine it affects it less. So if you're trying to draw it, it might draw less because of the air, or
no, I would assume, again, me with no science degree, but I would assume it would go further because there's less holding it back, so it would go longer and potentially have more.
Of a slice.
It might go. Oh, right. Well, then.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe I'm better
maybe
off going the other way.
Maybe
I'm better off like going the other way. Maybe I need to like play. What's the opposite of altitude?
Below sea level.
There must be a word. Altitude
Underwater.
and
Depth.
No,
Depth.
depth.
no,
Yeah, maybe I
it's
should play. I
underwater.
should play
Just
golf
play
at depth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm already not very long. I don't hit the ball very far, so I need all the help I can get. But if you ever do go to South Africa, do yourself the favor, go play some golf out there. Unbelievable courses. Obviously, the weather is conducive to it, and it's genuinely South Africa showing off because it's some of the nicest parts of some of the nicest towns that have golf courses. So I'm sure you'll love it. We played a round of golf when we were there last week in Durban, or 2 weeks ago. And Andy Uren, it was his first time in South Africa as well. And just, I remember the one tee box, a par 3 at Zimbali in Durban, and you could just see the ocean at the back. It's just trees everywhere you look, and there's 160-meter par 3 with water all around. What more can you ask for?
The kind of par 3, you just want to sit there with like a bucket of balls and a bucket of beers and just never leave.
Never leave. Exactly.
Perfect. Right, well, we don't want to keep you any longer.
We've kept you ages,
A couple of
sorry.
jokers. There's one thing I want to. You seem like a very humble man, a very, very humble man, Rhyno Smith. But then that goes against this. The overhit.
Oh, I don't.
It's gone rogue.
He's gone rogue.
I don't know what's happening.
Here I have a shirt that we won
Oh,
in some
yeah.
competition.
I think we
don't know,
won
for
it through some
URC
URC thing
A
last year.
URC competition, and we won a signed shirt, and obviously whichever club you want, and we chose Benetton, and we got this shirt that was signed, and it's quite hard to spot whose signature is whose, but yours is relatively easy to spot.
Right
And then-
under the logo.
And if there's a lot I like about this, because first of all, your autograph, it's very clear who it is, but
Legible,
also
which was great. We knew
I
who it was.
like where you put it. Where's the place that's going to be the most seen?
Yeah, it's just instinctive. You build. It's like it's a habit. When you just start signing, I always kind of look for the same spots. And on that jersey, I look for in the middle, to the left of where I've signed there. Normally, like in the middle, just on the white. But somebody took, I don't want to say my spot, the spot. And then I was like, oh, well, they gotta pivot. And then I went for the. It's not indicative of anything. It's certainly not indicative of me signing my name and replacing the club's name or anything like that.
Next year, you'll write it just over the top.
Over the logo.
Cross it out and write it next.
No, certainly.
No.
Very good. This club that's given me the opportunity. I respect. Hands in the.
Well, I mean, I started this by saying it was a match made in heaven. For the fans, it has been an actual match made in heaven. You joining Benetton, it's such a joy to watch you play, and it's so like we love exciting attacking rugby, the three of us. So every time you're starting, we get so exciting. I have a couple of questions I've just selected a few from the listeners. One of the questions from Antonio Tassoni is, what are you most enjoying about being in Benetton?
I think the biggest change for me with Benetton and potentially previous clubs I've been at is that I really feel a sense of being valued by the club. And I think maybe that's the biggest thing that's brought out the best in me. I feel also there's a bit of responsibility, like on me, just from conversations with just other players and so on. And it's been it's been nice to feel a sense of like there's an expectation for a number of reasons, and then having to wear that every day it's brought out something in me that I potentially didn't know was there before. I hoped it was there, but they had no proof of that. So yeah, probably that.
I love that. Eddie, do you want to ask anything? We've got another question from one of the listeners.
Well, one of the questions from one of the listeners is, do you want to join our touch rugby team? But we have to speak to Mrs. Smith about that. There's one of our listeners, a man called Jacob Umanga, has asked, what are your top 3 movies of all time?
Oh, Jay's just having a laugh with me because I always, when something's really good, I always go top 3, bro, or top 5. That's like the 7th movie in your top 5. But guys, I think top 3 is a very relative term. Doctor now resorted to drinking water like he's a camel. So if you can,
Oh, I can actually hear that.
Having a good time.
I'll go quickly. Top 3 movies. Yes, very difficult. Gotta say, Law Abiding Citizen. I love a good revenge movie.
Ooh, yeah.
Karma comes dressed in different clothes. So that's one. I would say, on the spot, really hard. I really enjoyed the movie Chasing Mavericks for no apparent reason. I just really enjoyed it. Such a feel-good movie. And then speaking about feel-good movies, I would say Chef. I really enjoyed Chef, that movie, Robert Downey Jr. and
Yeah.
Favre. And then I'll put 4 in my top.
Yeah, his top 3 is 4.
Because it's a relative term.
Yeah.
There's a movie called About Time. It's my wife and my joint favorite movie. We watched it.
It's a great movie.
So
Well,
yeah.
we did
Antics.
assume that there was some sort of inside joke to that question. And then Eddie, when he wrote that down, was like, I wonder what Eddie was guessing. And he was like, there must be a joke. There must be like ridiculous movies like Little Mermaid, Schindler's List, and Big. I was like, all 3 of those are banging movies.
Well, I just meant because they're sort of they're not great movies, but they're all out there. You know, they're very
Great
different types of movies. Who does the best barbecue at Benetton?
Ooh, who's asked that question? Is that someone at
Me.
Benetton?
It's literally
That's
just me.
Eddie.
I want to know because you've got the Argentinians, you've got the boys from Florence, you've got the South Africans. So I imagine there's quite a lot of competition for the old Bry.
I would say there's a fair bit of competition, especially in my first year, to be fair. We were 12 South Africans and 12 Argentinians at the time. And everyone's just going to back themselves. Honestly, if I had to say for my life, bet my life on that barbecue, Dewald, he's really good, especially with chicken. He does a mean chicken barbecue. Okay, so Didi, unbelievable. And then probably somewhere between Noel Teta Chaparro, him, and like Joaquin Riera. Both of them will spend 8 hours just there, just flipping, doing grafting, so that the boys can have some ribs. They'll go all day to deliver something good for the boys. So yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
that's-
And steak. Who do I have to butter up to get the best steak?
Listen, yeah, if you go past my door for a good steak, then I'm gonna be upset. I back myself. I put myself up there.
Oh, there
Well,
you
that's
go.
great. We said when we started this podcast, we want Stash and we want
Stash
Seb
and
Negri
steak.
to cook us a barbecue. But Seb Negri's never invited. I've never asked him, but he's never invited us to cook
Does he
him a
do
barbecue.
I don't know if he does a barbecue. I mean,
He must. He must.
Seb
Huh?
Negri on a barbecue. Let's just say, in my 3 years, I haven't seen Seb even make a fire. So I don't know. I trust it's in there. I trust he's got it in the pocket if he needs to whip it out one day. But let's call it a hidden talent for now, because I have not seen it.
Okay.
there you go. Seb, you've been challenged. He's called you out. But what I like about that is that he's gone 1 South African, so Didi, and then 2 Argentinians, but no Italians have made your cut for barbecues.
It could be because I haven't had any barbecue that the Italians have made.
Oh, okay.
Time that I've been normally us cooking for them.
All I've heard is that I've been invited for steak. That's all I've heard. That's all I got. And you look a very athletic man as well. You're 32, 34-inch waist. I'm sure you've got lots of shorts and tracksuit bottoms that you don't need anymore as well. So if you want to throw them in with the steak as well, that's also fine. I'm joking.
I'd rather not. Now let's see where we go on. Let's see how the touch of rugby goes. If you guys, who knows, maybe the winner's meal is around at the Smith house.
I love that. Rhyno, don't you? I wouldn't say that because Eddie will literally show up at your door. Don't tell him what you.
The issue I have is that I live in an apartment and I'm not allowed to have a barbecue.
Yeah, that's London for you.
It's very sad.
Yeah. No, well, if you, we've got some space. Let's see how we, as I said, let's see how much use the video gets we should put a number on it. If there comes a video, we're gonna send the video.
That's great, because actually one of our first videos that did very well, we released a video, I'm sure you'll remember it, maybe you won't, when we hit 1,000 followers last year, of Coach doing a front flip, and we obviously like tagged you in it because you are the front flip extraordinaire. So my question to you is, if we win against Edinburgh on the 1st of June, will you do a flip with Coach?
If Coach, will I do a flip with Coach? I could do a flip with Coach. Let's see how I feel after the 80 minutes if I'm playing it, if I last the 80. But yeah, backflips are reserved for special occasions. I reckon that win against Edinburgh, that potential win against Edinburgh, would classify as a special occasion. So yeah, as I say, let's see how we get on.
I'm not doubting your ability to do a flip, Rhyno.
It's this guy who hasn't flipped since the day he did that flip.
Aging into the 30s now, boys. Let's not speak too much about my age, but we're running out of time for flips as well, Coach. So
I'll try and get him in every day, to be honest. But
we share a birthday, according to your Wikipedia page.
We do?
11th of February. Yeah, it's my birthday.
Is it? What year are you born?
I'm older than you. I'm 1989.
Okay. Yeah. No, I am 11 February 1993.
Aquarius, apparently the nicest people.
Apparently.
It's what my grandma always says. My grandma always says Aquarius are the nicest people, but she is an Aquarius, so she would say that.
Rhyno, we've kept you so long. We're gonna let you go, but I will round this off. Speaking of your Wikipedia page, so obviously, like before this interview, I was like, okay, let's like get the stats, blah blah blah. I went on your Wikipedia page, and I've never done this before, but I edited your Wikipedia page because it said that your current club was the Cheetahs, and I was like, no, it's not. I've never edited Wikipedia before. I was like, oh, this is human beings. Anyone can do this. So then I went on and I put that you are now with Benetton, and I think it said your caps with Benetton because it did also say that you had played at Benetton, and it said you had 19 caps, and I was like, no, he does not. So I added your caps. So no, I've edited your Wikipedia page.
Thank you, because I think I was too proud to change it myself. Can I tell you, every so often, my missus and I are equally surprised. I'm a professional rugby player now. When we met, I was just playing rugby for fun at university. So we're both kind of like every now and then, it's so funny. Then the day after I played for the Barbas 2 years ago, we were in this hotel room there, and she came to watch the game, obviously. And then after a while, like we were just kind of laying there, and she was like, babe, like you're doing it. This is like for real. And we both kind of like just giggling, going like, no, this is for real. So yes, thank you for changing it, because I think we were too proud to go.
Well, I was not. I was like, no.
I bet now, Ellie, you're going to have to do it every single week.
I've never edited a Wikipedia page before, but I was like, no, this is a scandal. This must be updated. He plays for Benetton. No, thank you. And thank you for everything you've done at Benetton, but also the way that you have like really, I'm Italian. I'm like a very proud Italian. And I think Italians just really appreciate it when somebody like joins the culture as much as possible. And you like so clearly have, even during this interview, like some of your Italian hand gestures have really come out. I'm like, this guy should just be made an honorary Italian. It breaks my heart that you can't play for Italy, because obviously that would be the dream. But everything that the way that you've embraced Italian life and Italian culture, it's like so joyful to watch. And just thank you for staying, thank you for signing till 2026. That makes us so happy.
Yes, thank you very much. No, I must say thank you to the Italians, the club, everyone. And I've been these last couple of weeks with the 50th game, and that, like, I know 50 games is not a lot for, there are people that have played a lot more for, especially for one club. And that for me, it means so much. After the journey that I've gone through to get here, for me, it's like, it's the biggest achievement I've had in my life, probably bigger than playing for the Blitzbokke, to be honest with you. Like, probably playing for the Blitzbokke was slightly harder physically on my body, but this has been just like I would never have thought I'd be sitting here having played 50 odd games for one place. And I can only say thank you to the people, everyone here, for accepting me, club, players, fans, everyone. Flip, it's been awesome, and long may it continue.
Long may it continue. Grazie mille. Well, thank you
Grazie
so
mille.
much for joining us on this podcast. It's been an absolute dream and definitely like something we've wanted for a very long time. I know a lot of the listeners have wanted to have you on, so I'm so glad that we made it happen. We'll see you on the 1st of June. We can't wait. We have
come up with some new songs.
Yeah, we've got 10 days to come up with some songs, guys.
I've brought some flares.
Suddenly we've got a lot to do. We've got flares, new songs, stakes, backflips. It's all happening.
It's all happening. But you know what? I have confidence in all of us. I feel like we're doers. Like we're gonna make it happen. So
if everyone does get really far here, guys.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Let's
Thank
get
you
it done. Grazie mille, Rhyno, e ci vediamo il 1 giugno.
Vediamo.
Ciao. What a nice guy.
What a nice guy.
What a great guy.
What a
Lovely
great
guy.
I mean, Eddie got an invite for steak.
Well, I think that's really,
invite.
it's really pushing the
It was
the definition of the word invite.
It also was an invite in the sense that, like, when people are like, "Oh my god, we should catch up," and then they never speak to each other. No,
You ever pass by my door? I'll call the police. But that reminds me, George Biaggi owes me wine.
Yeah, he does.
He does.
But he won't be in Italy when we're there next weekend. So
no, but he is our team manager. He said he'd be our team manager. So George Biaggi,
for the touch tournament,
head of rugby operations at Zebre Parma, is our
head of rugby operations for Spritz and Scrums.
He's also the head of rugby operations for the Spritz and Scrums touch rugby team.
So there you go. George gives you wine. Rhyno gives you steak. You've got a meal sorted.
Little meal deal.
Little meal deal.
And on that note,
grazie mille.
Thank you all for listening. We will obviously be back after the Edinburgh game. This kind of replaced the Bulls versus Benetton game that I'm sure we all saw. Benetton came away with that crucial 1 point. So they're sitting on 49 alongside Edinburgh, alongside the Lions. It's all to play for in 10 days' time when Benetton will be hosting Edinburgh at home. The stakes could not be higher. The playoffs are still alive and kicking, and as Rhyno said, the progression is clear. So to me, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to do this.
Let's have it.
Andiamo.
Ciao.
Thank you all for listening. We'll be back not next week because there's the Challenge and Champions Cup final and we're not in those. We'll be back the week after when Benetton will hopefully have made the playoffs and the Champions Cup. Here's hoping. Ciao a tutti.
Arrivederci. Ciao.
Ciao.